Hi, this is Chris from the Project Management Guide. This video is all about working with and engaging with your project stakeholders. Working with stakeholders is a key skill for project managers to learn and master. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how to identify your project stakeholders, the role that they play in the project. And then in a moment, I'm going to talk about how you need to engage with your project stakeholders to run a successful project. So what or who are project stakeholders? Simply put, it's anybody that's impacted by the project. So these are the people that have a stake in the project itself. And they can range from highly impacted people, so they're going to have a big stake in the project, or they can be hardly impacted at all, so they can have a very small stake in the project. And of course, you've got the range of everybody in between, the highly impacted and the hardly impacted at all. So on this slide, I've put together a real broad range of stakeholders that you might have on your project. So you're going to, and this is going to cover all sorts of different types of projects. So it could be anything from an IT project, a manufacturing project that's changing a production line or something, to an infrastructure project, to a community project, in effect any sort of project, a construction project, for example. It could be almost anything, any sort of project at all. So that's why I just wanted to make it as broad as possible to sort of get the full range of types of stakeholders that we might encounter or need to work with. And and I've outlined here what their stakes are. So the most typical ones that I guess really are the customers. So people that are using your products or your service or something. So they typically might be a key stakeholder that might be impacted by the project that you're going to deliver. And also another really key one is employees. They're very often impacted by the projects that you're going to deliver. So they might be users of your systems, and it might impact the business processes, etc. And then we've got all the other typical types of stakeholders. So you might have investors, they might be impacted financially, and then we've got suppliers and vendors. So a typical stake here might be if you're changing a system or upgrading a system, or you might be removing a supplier or changing a vendor. Then obviously one vendor's going to change and a new one's going to come in, so they're going to be impacted by your project. And I've also covered things like communities here, for health and safety and economic development, and things like government, things like legislation. So you can see it's a really wide range of stakeholders, and I hope that sort of gives you some sort of picture of the type of stakeholders that you might have on your project. So you can see that stakeholder management is a key skill for the project manager to master. And we prefer to use the term project stakeholder engagement these days rather than stakeholder management, because engagement sort of sets the tone for working with the stakeholders rather than managing them. So we prefer to use that term instead. So the level of engagement that you have with any of the stakeholders on your project really depends on how impacted they are by your project. So if they're really highly impacted, they're going to have a big stake in your project. So they're going to need a high level of engagement. So you're going to need to work with them quite closely on project to plan it all out and execute it as well. And at the other end of the scale, people that are hardly impacted by your project are going to have a very small stake. So they're going to need minimal engagement on your project. So you might just need to provide them with information, updates, for example, on what's going on in the project. So as the stakeholder engagement is really all about the involvement levels that they will have in the project. And the more engaged people are in the project, the more successful the project is likely to be. So there are several stages of stakeholder engagement in your project. The first one is to identify who all of the stakeholders are on the project in the first instance. The second one is to analyse what the impact of the project is going to be on them, the stake that they're going to have in the project, and the role that they're going to play in the project as well. And then when you've done that, you need to work out a plan with the stakeholder to execute, and then finally you need to execute that plan. So you can see there's a lot involved in stakeholder engagement and working with stakeholders in general. So we've just given a really high level view here. So I'll drop into a lot more detail in some of the later videos in this series. So in summary then, a stakeholder is anyone that's impacted by the project, and the level of impact equals the level of engagement. And really good project managers are really good actually at working with stakeholders, and good engagement is key to successful projects. And I've worked on lots of projects where we've had really good engagement, and the projects have seemed to really sail through. And conversely, I've worked on a few projects as well where the engagement with stakeholders really hasn't been that good, and it's been a real struggle actually to get the projects across the line and make them go smoothly. So what I would say to project managers is really work hard on your project, your stakeholder engagement. It will make the projects run much more smoothly, you'll find. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe by hitting the bell below. I'd really love to hear your comments actually as well. So how are you getting on working with your stakeholders? Where have you had success, and what's happened when you haven't engaged with them, etc. So leave some comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And finally, if you want to find any more information, check us out at theprojectmanagementguide.com. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.